Welcome back to Enigmatic Echoez, the podcast where folklore, urban legends, and haunted history echo long after the story ends. Tonight, we're headed to Ireland, to a windswept hill overlooking Dublin, where one ruined building became the center of one of the country's darkest legends, the Hellfire Club. Now, before we begin, there's something important to understand. Historically, there wasn't only one Hellfire Club. Several groups across Britain and Ireland used the name during the 1700s. Most were made up of wealthy aristocrats, men known for excessive drinking, wild parties, gambling, and openly mocking religion. Basically, 18th century rich people discovering that consequences were more of a suggestion. But the Irish Hellfire Club? That version became something else entirely. Not because historians proved demonic rituals happened there, but because the stories surrounding the club became so disturbing, people stopped caring where history ended, and folklore began. And tonight, we're diving into both, the documented history and the terrifying legends that transformed one lonely ruin into one of Ireland's most haunted locations. Let's begin. The story begins on Montpelier Hill, just outside Dublin, Ireland. At the summit sits the ruins of a hunting lodge built in 1725 by William Connolly, sometimes also spelled Connolly in modern sources, Speaker of the Irish House of Commons, and this detail matters, because people often assume the Hellfire Club built the lodge. They didn't. The structure already existed years before the club became associated with it, and according to local folklore, the hill already carried a dark reputation. Some legends claim the lodge was built using stones taken from an ancient passage tomb. Others connect the hill to old druid rituals and sacred ground. Historically, the exact origins are debated, but local warnings about disturbing the hill became deeply tied to the legend later on. Because according to folklore, shortly after construction began, violent storms struck the area. Parts of the lodge reportedly suffered damage, and locals immediately believed the land itself had been angered. Now, realistically, Ireland gets storms constantly, but folklore doesn't care of meteorology. Folklore cares about symbolism, and to many people, the ruined lodge already looked cursed long before the Hellfire Club entered the story. Now, the Irish Hellfire Club itself emerged around 1737, founded by two men, Richard Parsons, the first Earl of Ross, and James Worsdale. Worsdale was a painter, a schemer, a man surrounded by scandal. Some accounts even described him as a fraudster and a manipulator. Ironically, one of the most famous paintings connected to the Hellfire Club, created by Worsdale himself, still survives today in the National Gallery of Ireland, which feels strangely fitting. The man helped paint the legend, literally. Together, the founders created a club infamous for excessive drinking, reckless behavior, political scandal, and openly mocking religion. And one detail tied to the club became especially infamous. According to historical accounts, during gatherings, the members often left one chair deliberately empty at the table, reserved for the devil. Now, whether this was meant as dark humor, religious mockery, or something the members genuinely believed, depends on who's telling the story. But that single tradition became one of the most enduring parts of the Hellfire Club legend, because once people heard wealthy aristocrats were literally saving a seat for Satan himself, the rumors practically wrote themselves. But there's something many people don't realize. Historians believe many Hellfire Club gatherings likely happened in Dublin city centre, at the Eagle Tavern on Cork Hill near Dublin Castle, not necessarily at the lodge atop Montpelier Hill. In fact, some historians debate whether the members regularly met at the hunting lodge at all, but folklore ignored the tavern completely, because an isolated ruin sitting on a storm-covered mountain, that's where legends belong, not in a crowded city tavern. So over time, the ruined lodge and the Hellfire Club became inseparable, and eventually, the stories surrounding them became far darker than reality itself. This is the most famous story tied to the Hellfire Club, and honestly, It sounds exactly like something people would whisper about beside candlelight during a thunderstorm. According to legend, on one particular stormy night, someone finally arrived to claim that empty seat. Members of the club were gathered inside playing cards. Rain slammed against the stone, wind screamed across the hill, and suddenly, a stranger appeared at the door. No one recognized him, but the members invited him inside anyway, which feels like a terrible decision in retrospect. Because if a mysterious man appears during a lightning storm asking to join your secret drinking club, maybe don't immediately offer him wine. The stranger sat at the table, cards were dealt. The game continued, and at some point, one of the players dropped a card onto the floor. When he bent down to retrieve it, he looked beneath the table and saw the stranger had cloven hooves instead of feet. Not shoes, not boots, hooves. The player screamed. The stranger reportedly smiled and, according to the legend, burst into flames before vanishing through the ceiling. Other versions say he disappeared directly into the storm outside. But either way, the message was clear. The devil himself had attended the gathering, and after that story spread, the Hellfire Club stopped being merely scandalous. It became feared. Now, we move into one of the strangest stories connected to the Hellfire Club, the legend of the Black Cat. According to Irish folklore, a priest once visited the lodge after hearing rumors about demonic activity tied to the hill. During the visit, a massive black cat reportedly appeared inside the building. Witnesses described glowing eyes, unnatural behavior, and in some versions, the creature walked upright at times, almost human. The priest allegedly became convinced the animal was possessed, or possibly not an animal at all. Some stories claimed it was a demonic spirit summoned during rituals. Others claimed it was the devil himself taking another form. The priest reportedly performed prayers and exorcism rituals, and after hours, the creature vanished, but according to local legend, people still occasionally report seeing a large, dark shape moving near the ruins late at night. Too large to be a normal animal, watching silently from the shadows before disappearing into the trees. And personally, if I ever encountered a cat standing upright in the Irish mountains, that hill immediately belongs to the cat. I'm leaving. Respectfully. Now, another infamous figure tied to the Hellfire Club folklore was Simon Luttrell, later known as the Earl of Carhampton. Historically, Luttrell was very real, and his reputation was so cruel and scandalous that folklore eventually transformed him into something almost supernatural. Stories described him as manipulative, violent, and morally corrupt. Some legends even referred to him as the King of Hell, which honestly sounds less like an aristocratic title and more like someone you should never trust near ancient ruins. According to folklore, Luttrell made a deal with the devil himself, and when he eventually died, dark figures allegedly appeared to claim his soul. Some stories describe servants witnessing shadowy entities dragging him screaming through the lodge. Others say unnatural flames erupted inside the building during his final moments. Historically, there's no evidence demons collected aristocrats from haunted mountain lodges, but the legends surrounding Luttrell became deeply tied to the growing terror associated with the Hellfire Club. And over time, his story became part of the hill itself. Now here's where the story becomes modern, because Montpelier Hill still exists today, and people still visit constantly. Tourists, ghost hunters, urban explorers, and according to many visitors, the atmosphere changes completely after dark. People report sudden cold spots, shadow figures, whispers, feeling of panic, electronics malfunctioning, and the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Some visitors claim they've heard growling in the woods surrounding the ruins. Others describe seeing figures standing inside the structure, only to discover nobody is actually there. But one of the most common experiences isn't visual at all. It's emotional. An intense feeling of dread, like the hill itself wants you to leave. And honestly, the psychological aspect might be scarier than the ghost stories, because ruins affect people, darkness affects people, isolation affects people. Your brain starts searching for danger, every sound feels deliberate, every shadow feels alive, and suddenly, your imagination begins building monsters for you. And there are still encounters people struggle to explain. One recurring modern legend involves a mysterious woman seen near the road leading toward Montpelier Hill. Drivers describe her standing motionless late at night, sometimes dressed in black, sometimes white, always silent. People who stop to help reportedly find no one there. Other stories claim she disappears once the vehicle passes. Hikers on the hill also report hearing footsteps behind them, only to turn around and find empty darkness. Others describe hearing distant laughter echoing from the ruins late at night. Not loud laughter, quiet laughter. The kind that sounds just far enough away to make you question whether you really heard it at all. And according to paranormal investigators, storms seem to intensify activity around the hill, especially thunderstorms, which almost feels too perfect for the legend. Lightning striking above ruined stone walls, wind tearing through the hollow stone openings of the ruin, and voices supposedly echoing across the mountain. That's exactly the kind of setting where legends survive forever. But here's the second story, the less supernatural explanation. Some historians believe the Hellfire Club's terrifying reputation grew largely from public fear and exaggeration. Think about it. You have wealthy elites behaving recklessly in deeply religious 18th century Ireland, drinking excessively, mocking religion, holding secretive gatherings. Rumors were inevitable, and once society began viewing them as immoral, the stories escalated. Wild parties became satanic rituals, scandal became devil worship, and eventually, the men themselves became monsters in folklore. So maybe the devil never appeared at the card table. Maybe the black cat legend evolved generations later. Maybe the ruined lodge simply became the perfect place for fear to grow. But honestly, that doesn't necessarily make the story less disturbing, because sometimes human beings create haunted places themselves, through cruelty, through fear, through rumor, and through stories repeated long enough that they begin to feel real. The Hellfire Club legend survived because it taps into fears people still carry today. Secret societies, powerful elites, hidden rituals, and the terrifying possibility that some places absorb the darkness of everything connected to them. Even now, Montpelier Hill remains one of Ireland's most famous paranormal locations. Ghost tours still tell the stories, visitors still climb the hill after dark, and locals still warn people not to linger there too long at night. Whether because of ghosts or because of abandoned ruins on isolated mountains are terrifying enough already. And maybe that's why the legend works so well, because you never fully know where history ends and imagination begins. But somewhere on that hill, surrounded by broken stone and cold wind, people still feel something. And sometimes, that's enough. So, would you visit the Hellfire Club after dark? Would you climb Montpelier Hill during a thunderstorm, knowing the stories tied to that ruin? Or would you stay far away from the empty chair at the table? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed tonight's episode, don't forget to like and follow Enigmatic Echoez on YouTube and Instagram for more folklore, haunted history, and legends best listened to with the lights on. Because sleep is temporary, but hearing phantom laughter from a ruined lodge in the Irish mountains at 2 a.m., that stays with you forever. And until next time, keep listening carefully. Some places never stop echoing. Good night.